So I think we're going to share this presentation. We can turn on their mics as well.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah. All right, thanks guys. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all today. I'll give you a quick overview of who Valmet is, and then really want to dive into the Q&A portion of this. I'm Marissa Davey. I'm the sales manager for energy and process systems in North America with Valmet. I have been in the automation space for over half a decade, and I have previously worked with some of our other automation providers in this territory.
Hi, I'm Mike Davis. I'm a product manager for Valmet in the automation systems business. It's my second time at ARC. The last time I was working for Novatech. I've been, in automation for 25 years, but I was mostly on the customer side for most of my career, and have been on the vendor side for about 5 years now.
Thanks, Mike. Chris Gephardt. I've been working in process control since 1998. And so I hope to share a little bit of our knowledge and where Valmet is going with modernizing your plants and what we can do for that. So thank you, Marissa.
Mike, good luck.
Sure. Hi. So, right. If you're like me a couple years ago, you might not have heard of Valmet if you don't work in pulp and paper, which is our largest market in the U.S., and really one of our largest markets all around the world. But Valmet is both a technology supplier, so we make things like you can buy an entire pulp mill from Valmet and paper making equipment. But obviously we also make automation systems. We've been making automation systems for over 60 years, starting with and going back to pneumatic analog controls. Valmet's a global company with sites around the world. We're headquartered in Finland, but our U.S. headquarters for the 2,500 or so people in the U.S. is in Atlanta, Georgia. We're in the East in 2023. We're about a €5.5 billion company with, I think now we're close to 20,000 people. Next slide. To the sustainability topic, especially because of the industries that we work in, sustainability is a very important topic inside of Valmet. I think some other speakers mentioned the fact that sustainability goals reach outside of your own company. And for Valmet, we certainly recognize that we have to take what we call a 360 view, because our impact on the sustainability of what we make and what we deliver is only one small part usually of the life cycle of an asset. So how do we design our assets that we sell to have a low carbon impact and help get us to that low carbon future? And we're quite proud of the things that are tucked in there at the bottom. I think in 2024 was our 11th consecutive year on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, and also proud that third-party auditors like the EcoVadis, have seen us and certified us as a gold member.
All right. This is Valmet's vision and a roadmap for our customers and where we see them taking their next level of automation. On the bottom x-axis, this is actually from the car industry, and it shows the different levels of autonomy. We have partially automated, fully automated, and then building up to semi-autonomous operations where we're using advanced process controls on one asset or one part of the process, then scaling up where we have multiple process areas integrated together, utilizing their advanced process controls to communicate and optimize together. And our end target is a fully autonomous plant. Where we see most of our customers is between steps 1, 2, and 3, and we expect growth to get to 4 and 5. And we've been delivering our advanced process controls to our customers for over 30 years and have learned a lot through those times. On the y-axis, you see the different parts of a plant that can be optimized and moving towards autonomous levels of operation. First, we start small. You look at one piece of equipment. How do you optimize that? Then you get to the next step. You look at one process area. You expand to multiple process areas. And then eventually we want to integrate the ERP system with the automation and connecting the IT and the OT together.
All right. This is what Valmet has done 2 years ago. They acquired Novatech Process Solutions. So I don't know if you've heard of the D3 DCS. I worked on my first D3 DCS in 1998. So why is this important to current users, possibly new D3 DCS users, and those non-users? I'd like to cover that. Basically, obviously, to our new or current D3 users, we've seen it's a larger company. So it's a backing to get those systems, like kind of what Larry was talking about. How do we get them sustainable? How do we modernize them? And this acquisition is going to help our current customers. We are always going to support them, and we're going to keep driving them forward. The D3 DCS comes from 7 owners since its existence. In 1981-82, it won the Chemical Engineering Valor Award. Back then, it was EMC Controls. Then it became Rexnord, then Banner, then Texas Instruments, GSE Systems, Novatech for 20 years, and now it's part of the Valmet family. So obviously, on the D3 business side, Valmet's a very large company. So how does it bring value to the non-D3 users or Valmet as a whole? And we can see up there, I'm not going to read the slides, but brings 40 plus experience in different parts of the industry that Valmet is now part of. So more than just like what Mike talked about, pulp and paper. So whether it be specialty chemical, whether it be food and beverage, pharma, agricultural, the system has been around so long that it's in those Fortune 500 companies. And we're hearing and learning it's hard to switch out. And they may not want to switch out, right? The current D3 system runs on Windows 2022 server, and it can be virtualized, whether it's Hyper-V, VMware. So this acquisition puts Valmet as a player with you. You can imagine the competition we're in with DCS World, but now Valmet has and supports and maintains 4 value DCS platforms. So, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. So the 2 DCS that we're probably going to focus on today is the Valmet D3 system, which Chris just explained, and then the Valmet D&AE control system, which is our latest. This is an integrated system with our own hardware, our own software, our own information management system, all integrated under one online platform where you have your user interface, information, and engineering tools. And with Valmet, it's not just about the automation system, it's the services and the tools you get on top that help drive our customers towards their goals. We have our whole package of industrial applications, advanced process controls that are tailored towards our customers' direct needs. Our system is cyber secure by design from the first line of code from every piece of hardware. We also have our own training simulators that we use for implementation, commissioning of systems, as well as for continued operator training. And then our mantra is, we are your partner. This is not a supplier-customer relationship. This is a partnership, and we want to ensure that you have the right support you need for the lifetime of your plant.
Yeah, and Marissa, to go off of that, some maybe of the inorganic offerings of the automation from Valmet would be like what we kind of just talked about with the recent acquisitions. And one was the acquisition of the process gas chromatography from Siemens. So now Valmet is the provider and supplier and maintainer supporter of the Maxim 2 GC platform. That strengthened Valmet's automation offering, opens a lot more doors, a lot more opportunity. Valmet also has a flow control division. So with acquisitions of flow valves, you may have heard of Nellis, Jamesbury, Stonell. Those are all Valmet products, as well as pumps like the Flow Rocks. So we like to, exactly what Marissa said, we are, and many previous before we were up here, was collaboration. We want to be a team player with a lot to offer and provide in the controls world. So.
I will leave this up here for a moment. This is our contact information and a QR code to our website, but we will begin Q&A now.
Yeah, we can begin the Q&A. Actually, you could probably just leave that slide up there.
Okay.
I'm glad D3 found a home with Valmet. You know, I've always found Valmet to be a company that values technology. And I remember going to an Akama show in the late 90s, and a Valmet guy was rocking around with one of the first wearable industrial computing devices. And today, I think if you looked at it, it might look a little ridiculous. But at the time, it was incredible. I'd never seen anything like it.
I will chime in, Larry. I'm glad you didn't bring up parts from the D3 on the eBay, because you will find them.
No, I didn't look for those. Okay, so I figured Infinity and that 90 would probably be two of the most obvious examples. So let's get started on the questions. And like I said, I want to prioritize questions from the audience. We do have a microphone person here, so if anybody wants to kick us off with some migration-related questions, please do so. If I don't see any hands, I'll just start going down the question list. And this is really for anybody that wants to answer. What do you see as some of the challenges your customers face out there, and how has the digital transition supported their site goals in terms of having to migrate systems? And again, we're talking in the context of, you know, sustainability and decarbonization.
Yeah, I can take this first one. I think one of the main challenges we're seeing across the board is the reduction in force, the lack of resources. There's a lot of employee turnover now. And so that talent we've retained for 30, 40 years, we're seeing that leave. And now we have to be able to operate in a way that still meets the challenging yields and throughputs we have to deliver, as well as keeping our costs in balance. And to do that, we need to find a way to be more agile in our operations with less people. And when we implement some digital solutions here, we're able to take off some of the responsibilities of the day-to-day, like tuning a loop or making sure you're within a certain set point. That used to be an operator's role. Now that can be as part of a package for a digital solution. And then we can change that operator's role into something that's more focused on finding cost savings at the plant or finding another way to optimize the facility. We actually saw this in a site we had in Japan. They came to us and they said, we cannot hire people because no one wants to work where the location was. We need to run with only 5 people. How can we do it? And what we were able to do was implement a solution we have, which is a mill-wide optimization, which is basically a digital twin of the entire site. And after that implementation, we were able to keep them up and running. And they are continuing to run today through the use of these digital solutions.
Good. That's good. Very good. What do you see as some of the challenges implementing these modernization solutions at these facilities, right? I mean, that always seems to be the stickler, I think, for a lot of end users. You know, they realize they want to migrate. They have some goals in mind, but, you know, the actual challenges in implementing the migration project can kind of get you out in the weeds, right? I mean, there's a lot of different options out there for migrating your system. And, you know, should I start at the HMI? Should I, you know, replace my IO? What do you have as far as some of your guidelines and advice for users to make the implementation process easier?
Yeah, I think to start at a higher level, and then I'll let Chris go in some of the details, it's buy-in. You get people, the age-old, oh, we've always done it this way, or we've always worked with this system, but you have to start with changing their mindset and making them open to a cultural shift, because implementing a new control system, implementing these new digital solutions, it's not just the technology, it's the culture and how you go through your way of thinking out the plant, where you might have been thinking at an equipment-based mindset and how can I optimize this one piece, but now you're thinking at a plant-wide level of how can I support our operations. And I think one way to start is identify your bottleneck. Where is the biggest pain point for people, and how can we implement this new technology to change that and help them? And in return, that also helps with measuring your ROI, which is important for investors, important for management, and just important for being able to continue to drive forward your operations.
I'll chime in as well. And I think probably all of us can answer part of this question. And going in the last section here in section 5, it's neat to see how all this comes together, because it's kind of been said with all the previous presentations. And it can be as simple as infrastructure, right? We talked about the systems are old. How do we bolt on the new stuff? We're seeing how to decarbonize to and bolt onto existing plants. Same thing with controls, with sustainability and trying to get it modernized. So as simple as power grounding. You may be dealing with an old facility that, how do you put in a new digital solution because the power and grounding infrastructure is just not there? Something from a lack of funding. It's just going to cost too much money. Where's the ROI? I got to keep my revenue. I got to keep my value of my production coming in, and which is really your impacts to your bottom line, loss of production, having to shut down. How do you do this stuff without really impacting people's jobs, salaries? How do we pay for that if the plant's shut down? So, and then really the amount of time. Is this something that we can do on a weekend, overnight shift, or are we talking months, possibly years? So all those come into play with that's what you guys see. And like I said, you guys are probably better to answer this question than us sitting up here. So
I just want to chime in that Larry made me think of it when you were presenting earlier, but kind of the flip side of what is the challenge, but the opportunity is at these aging with these aging systems. And sometimes it's a regulatory requirement that the aging system can't comply with, or that it's some data-driven need that the business needs. But we have seen with our customers, sometimes the return on investment comes from meeting that regulatory commitment demand, or sometimes the return on investment comes from the savings generated by the energy management system are so great that that pays for not just the Valmet energy management system, but the whole kind of modernization of the control system underneath it. It goes back to, like you said, the automation is often 1% of the cost. It seems expensive at the time, but the payback for our customers that's one way that customers are getting these projects funded, is looking all the way to the end of how much is that data worth.
And it's worth a lot. Yeah.
I think touch on the second part of your question, like what is the driver? As Mike says, regulatory or other drivers is spare parts, the inaccessibility to spares. I think we saw eBay. Relying on eBay can only get you so far, because at some point that one critical spare that failed is not going to be available. And when some of our customers have critical operations that need to be running 24/7, having the risk of not being able to get your spare on time is something they can't endure. And when you really calculate the ROI, if I shut down for one day, what's my loss of production? What is that costing me? And then another piece of that is service and support. When it comes to some of these older systems, they are no longer supported by the OEM. They don't have this local support nearby to help them with the system. They're reliant on one person at the site who built it out 30 plus years ago. Then that adds more risk, and we want to help de-risk our customers' operations.
Yeah, I've seen some sites that you wouldn't believe. Stuff from the 70s, still running.
I have a customer, Larry, that is Open VMS digital equipment deck platform.
Yeah.
And it's a double-edged sword, right? The stuff still works. It was put in the mid 80s and it still runs. So it's risk versus reward, and we're starting to get to that point. Yep. And literally your wiring is falling apart, right? Your wiring is brittle enough. I think of a plant in Texas, in Pasadena, Texas. I won't name it, but the wiring is falling apart. So
yeah, and that blew me away the first time I heard about brittle wiring. I wasn't even aware of that. But we do have an audience question, so please, sir. And just tell us who you are quickly.
Sir. Oh, now it's working. I'm Lucas Camzan from BeamBev. I heard a lot about ROI and return of investments, how we do it, right? And a big challenge we have today in our company, we're going through a long series of trying to replace not just control systems, sometimes MES, old legacy platforms. And the thing is, sometimes these old pieces of tech, they're not new, but they still deliver some of the benefits. And the challenges improving ROI, return of investments, on top of what they already delivered. There is a big deal. How is there any kind of thing you can share based on clients' projects you did? How these players are doing this and justifying, because the trust is there, but you need to show the money, right? Or is this coming, man?
Absolutely, yeah. Scare tactic. You got to use it because corporate world doesn't want to go. But Marissa, do you want to go ahead and kind of give an example on that one?
For ROI? Yeah, I think what we've typically done with delivering our solutions is we'll do studies. And a lot of time that's where we're able to prove our ROI, so we can measure a process previously before implementing an advanced process control for boiler optimization boiler optimization. And so we look at how is this piece of equipment operating now with its current control system, and then we take measurements on the excess O2, the fuel consumption, your emissions reporting. So we collect a lot of data ahead of time, and then once we implement the solution, we're able to provide ROI, show the impact of it. And additionally, we do performance guarantees and availability guarantees. We back our solutions. We trust that what we're going to implement is going to provide good opportunity for you.
We'll try to break it down into milestones, right? It's hard to look at it as a whole and instead break it into 3, 4, 5 pieces that may take 3 to 5 years to accomplish the goal you want to go. But it's easier to tackle to say, okay, year 1, we're gonna handle maybe this section of the plant. And maybe that covers upgrading a legacy system or replacing a legacy system. And then step 2 maybe is handling the power and grounding so that we can switch out the IO. But it's really looking at the project as a whole and trying to break it down so that you can see the end. Because when you look at it as a whole, it's hard to see how to get there.
I think we agree with you, right? You don't want to rip and replace if you don't have to. That's an expensive proposition. Sometimes it's necessary, right? I mean, there are times when it is necessary to rip all the old stuff out and put new stuff in. But 99% of the time, it requires an evaluation of what you already have, and then you kind of plot out a path for a phased migration. And you want to hit the areas that have the biggest impact first, right? And a lot of those are probably going to be software oriented.
I mean, cybersecurity is big, and you touched on it, Larry. You may have a system you can't handle that. Maybe that's a driving force. Maybe you go that area and you bolt on a server that says, hey, this is going to be an in-between firewall security piece of equipment for me. There's every case is unique. But
yeah, a lot of times cybersecurity is enough, right? Look at the water wastewater industry, right? All those guys are upgrading their systems now, mostly because of security. We have one more question over here. Yes, sir.
Hi, David Myers. There. David Meyer with Siemens. One of the challenges of keeping automation systems modern is a lot of these industrial plants are a collection of different manufacturers, different systems that have evolved over the decades. And there's techniques like MTP that are emerging to help those. What are some of the other newer technologies and techniques that are available to help homogenize, I guess, control systems as you move forward with new technologies?
I think, we've all heard, and I think, it's been probably 5 years since OPAS, trying to get everyone to play together. So I think the ability to have that open architecture to play nicely, we're in a niche business where if we need to talk to a competitor system, we should be able to talk to a competitor system. So whether that be OPC UA or whether that be the ability to maybe export data to some third-party data crunching software and that legacy system be able to do the same thing, however path to export it, so that you can play nicely and be together. Because at the end of the day, everyone wants the same result. Efficient, safe plant, and as someone stated earlier, to get home safely, right? So that probably the biggest thing is trying to be open an open platform and look at what's best in class out there. It may not be something we offer. It may be something the customer requests that says they really want to use that piece of software, and we need to play nice and do that kind of stuff. So I don't know if you guys have a specific case you guys want to talk about, Marissa?
No one plant is the same. There isn't a single copy paste that we have seen. There's always going to be a certain process area that's going to be tied in that could have another control system, could have a PLC. And what we pride ourselves in is our flexibility in our architecture. So we're able to handle multiple different process areas, unify it under one platform, allow it to be scalable so you can add on additional processes without impacting your current operations and continue to grow with the demands of the customer.
Yeah, I think that one of the goals obviously is, facility by facility and corporation by corporation coming up with a roadmap for where you want to go. If it's when you have this mix of old vendors, is a goal to replace that with one system from one vendor, or are you looking more, with this open, the open process automation standard or some of the other competing open standards to maintain that vendor mix, but really to come up with a roadmap and then start building your way toward that future. Find what the most urgent or cost effective or what have you, and start. But work with your trusted suppliers and start working on that roadmap.
Yeah, all good comments. Just one additional thing that we see, with the advent of sustainability concerns, is that these plants are no longer going to be islands of functionality anymore, right? There's going to have to be more interplant communications with a focus on sustainability and even interorganizational communications. There's a case study I had at a major European port that I read recently where all the different companies in the port want to share information so they can do more efficient load balancing of all the, power across the port complex. So these kinds of things, right? Not just communications within the plant, but between plants and even between different organizations are going to become more important. So I would say any kind of a migration plan that you develop is probably going to have to take those kinds of things into consideration. You want to adopt a platform that's going to give you the flexibility, right? And have that advanced technology in order to be able to let you do that. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Okay. Let's talk about energy costs and energy management. What kind of things does Valmet see from its customers looking to reduce energy costs, transition towards more sustainable operations? We mentioned earlier integrating sustainable power sources into the manufacturing process. Does Valmet have any comments about what customers are doing or what needs to happen there?
Yeah, for one, what we're seeing is it really does depend on where you are in the world. We have customers on either end of or either side of the spectrum there that there's places in the world that are building new pulverized coal for power generation, and there's other parts of the world, for that are working toward this energy transition. And I think a lot of where we've seen, in our industrial facilities outside of the power generation is some of what was talked about earlier is finding new uses for existing streams in your facility as part of this energy transition. So realizing that the CO2 going up the stack is becoming a more and more valuable resource, and finding ways to, install the equipment and provide the automation to capture that CO2, and you find a way to get it to someone who can buy it or reuse it inside your own plant.
I think to add to that, when we look at the energy markets today, they're very complex and they're always changing. And it's really difficult for our customers to navigate that and still be successful in using energy when it's the lowest cost or being able to build their maintenance plans based on their energy consumption and energy markets. And so on the software side, something we've implemented is our energy management system, which is looking at the day ahead forecasting, looking at the price of energy compared to coal, natural gas, solar, wind, and helping our customers better predict and set up their operations to use energy when it's the lowest cost, understand what assets are consuming the most energy at site, how they can lower their production costs, lower their fuel consumption. And I think where we're seeing the biggest impact of this is those high energy consumption industries like power to X or other energy generation facilities. And I think the key is flexibility here. If you are flexible in your operations, you'll be able to find success.
Larry, if I could add real quick, just on, I'll make it quick on 2 points. One on Mike's on location, and it really does depend, right, on your local government, your administration, what regulations are out there. I had a customer that we took apart a coal plant about 18 years ago in North Carolina. We boxed it up in wood crates. It went on the boats and shipped down to Central America. We built that plant back up in Guatemala. It's running today and actually going through an upgrade here this year and actually expanding. The plant was actually taken out by a volcano, and they've rebuilt the power plant, and it's state-of-the-art running. So it really depends. This is a coal-burning power plant in Guatemala. It's the same world we live in, right? But it's just where you live at based upon what you can do. And then on Marissa's point with energy, and again, I think you guys would be able to answer this, and we just happen to be sitting up here, but I believe Mike touched on the term that I'll steal from Mike, and it's low-hanging fruit. You know, what's out there if we can capture data that I can reduce energy immediately. And it's amazing what you can do just by capturing some data and figuring out maybe I shouldn't run all 3 lines during peak power rates. Maybe I should run that once my power rate goes down. All of a sudden I've shifted to a first shift start off instead of second to third and vice versa. So thanks, Larry.
Yeah, I got you. And I don't think Mike should feel bad about saying that, because there's lots of low-hanging fruit out there. I mean, energy efficiency is the lowest of the hanging fruits, if you will. And I think, one thing is, if we modernize, that probably could unveil opportunities that we didn't know before, right? So it's kind of like the sum is greater than the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, right? Once we get everything modernized and everything, we can start to uncover things that maybe we had no idea, we could take advantage of before in terms of energy efficiency and things like that. So with your old system, I think in a lot of cases, it's you don't know what you don't know, and that's obviously a big problem. Do we have any more questions from the audience? This is your chance.
We have a few more questions.
You have a few more questions. So with plants that have these complex aging systems, what can a user do to ensure a smooth transition to these new digital technologies without interrupting operations? And we did a little bit of this at ARC. We talked about hot cutovers, and how can we do all this without actually interrupting operations?
So I think many in the industry do this, but one thing Valmet prides on is the ability to do online upgrades. So if you have redundant systems, whether they're legacy systems or newer systems, what we try to do is get that new version, new upgrade, and load it on the non-running side of your controllers. Run it on part of the plant that actually is not being used in that redundancy mode. And then to the operator in the control room, they're literally looking at the plant as the older one, and they turn to the right and it's the plant running the new one. And the ability to do that without taking the plant down. So there's a lot of preparation in that, a lot of testing. Possibly it can't be done and you got to stage the system in parallel. But keeping that downtime to the minimum, we kind of touched on it earlier as far as bottom line in production. You don't want to shut the plant down. And it requires excessive testing, requires simulation. You may be running your process a little bit differently. And I think we're going to touch on it on one of our last questions with AI, but running as many scenarios of bad mishaps as you can going to that new upgrade or migration or modernization. And the last thing is training, train and prepare, bless you, train and prepare for it. That's how Valmet does. I don't know, Mike or Marissa, you have something else. I know, Mike.
I mean, this is a similar question that you were talking about earlier, and I know I already said roadmaps like 15 times, so 16 times. That's the smooth transition.
Repetition is good. Don't worry about it.
The smooth transition, I think, it comes from planning and prioritizing and budgeting, making sure that you're starting with the right investments and coming up with a plan. And really, just as a vendor, it's awkward to say. That's one of our challenges, is making sure that our customers realize what the problems are. So that's one of our challenges, is that what the problems and the opportunities are that will come from upgrading. So this, especially with the reductions in force, there's fewer and fewer people that are maybe struggling on their own, not knowing that there's solutions out there. So it's our challenge to get out and let people know what's available.
And I think that looking at competitor replacements, as many times we do see these older systems, we are able to utilize the hardware of some of these other systems. So it's not a full rip and replace, even if it's not our own Valmet system. We also have a mantra: we will always have an upgrade path for our customers, so their systems will always be supported. But when we are looking at other systems out in the field, we try to simplify the process for our customers. If they want to keep their hardwired I/O, we will link to it. We can use many different communication protocols, Ethernet IP, Profinet, Profibus, you name it. We'll use whatever the customer has at site to adapt to their needs and try and simplify the upgrade.
Very good. Any other audience questions before I move on? Yes, sir. We have one over here.
Hello, Flávio Valtz from EY. I'm from Brazil, and we have, like you know, a huge pulp and paper market, and we are facing a problem to replace the operators. They are retiring, and the new guys, the millennials and Z generations, don't want to be operators anymore. How are you helping your clients? I know that some companies in the US has the same problems, and it's even worse when the factory is in a small city. So, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question, because we see it as far as for engineering too, right? It's hard to find the guys that want to be a controls engineer or applications engineer. As far as the operators, one thing that Valmet does is it will connect to your plant and analyze and monitor your plant. So we actually have a room dedicated to each customer where their system is actually, whether we're in Atlanta and we're monitoring a plant in Brazil, it's 24/7 monitoring. And if we see that indication that something's going bad, the plant is notified. So Valmet actually provides services for that. We don't want to replace the operators, but if we can provide that extra eye overseeing, even from my business, even on more the D3 DCS side, we'll even consolidate control rooms. So I had a customer that had the same problem. They could not find the operators. So we consolidated a control room that with two plants that were 22 miles apart. So literally one control room running two facilities 22 miles apart. Obviously there's an emergency backup plan in case that other plant needs help that doesn't have that active operating control room. But so we have scenarios where we gotta help the customer come up with a solution for that.
Yeah. I think Valmet's level of involvement with our customers varies. We have some sites where we are heavily involved. We can have a resident engineer at site that's supporting operations. Others, we get a phone call every few months when there's an issue. We have routine maintenance visits. And I think we need to rethink the role of the operator when we get to the Gen Z, their generation, because they're used to gaming, they're used to high performance graphics. It's a different mindset they have than the old school operators, I would say. And I think what Valmet's done is with our tools and even our user interface, we've made it more dynamic and given more tools to the operators to use. So they're not just changing set points, but they're looking at data, they're looking at these applications that are finding insights for them in the operations and allowing them to think harder and make these changes to the process rather than just being clicking and changing and having a limited role.
It's a real problem.
I'll say too, just repeating a couple of things, but don't forget your question. But some of the other things that go toward this, it's not just centralizing control rooms, but sometimes it's a corporate centralized control room. But yeah, reducing things down, and user experience and HMI design certainly plays a lot into that to allow fewer people to do the operations job. And then we're depending on the level and the investment or the size of the problem, but some of our tools like advanced process control and mill-wide optimization with a digital twin, where there's also play a factor in that of being able to run with reduced headcount. So kind of this automating your automation approach, but providing tools so that, again, the basic controls aren't being done by a person necessarily, but the tools that the people are looking at are just looking at, are we on track with our set points? Do we need to slow down production for whatever reason? And can I just hit a button that says slow down production instead of having to go make the 13 adjustments that are then going to happen automatically?
And I'm sure you've seen some of the legacy displays that are out there and some of the older systems that really, really badly need to be replaced. I can't imagine a Gen Z person, sitting down at some of these old, multicolor, vector graphics kind of displays, and these desperately need to be upgraded. I think we had another question over here. Rick? Is this our last question? Okay.
Yes, I'm Rick Riss. I work on the energy team along with Larry, but you stimulated a question that Valmet is known for working in the paper industry. The paper industry is known to often generate local electric power, with biomass. And then with your acquisition of Novatech, now you have satellite clocks, you have power measurement systems, and maybe some additional software. So my question for Valmet is, how is Valmet helping your customer base to be able to become more grid interactive, perhaps to participate with things like demand response or peak shaving, or cooperating with the electric utility to be a better customer to the utility?
Yeah, and I think we're all going to have to answer this, but first I want to clarify that Valmet's acquisition was Novatech Automation Solutions. We still have the equipment that you talked about, but Novatech still exists as far as the Orion, the measurements, the data concentrator. So Novatech was kind of split into two. They sold off the process solutions, but they kept the utility automation. So you'll still see Novatech out there in the substations and the windmill farms. Okay, Marissa, for Mike.
Yeah, so I think that touches on our energy management system we've been implementing, and that's exactly what you just said. We're looking at load forecasting, peak shaving, and what this tool does is take that data from the local energy providers so they can understand how they can optimize their energy consumption at site, and they can do their week ahead forecasting, their year ahead forecasting. And it's not just providing them the data, but also the advanced process control. It sits on top. So when we're taking this data, interpreting it, and implementing it into their operations automatically.
just from a, as my product manager hat on, I mean, it starts with, the DNA, being able to use a IEC 61150 instrument as direct input. There's basic things that, the DCS product helps to be capable of, so that we can integrate these instruments and then make these decisions, or help assist the decision making at the plant.
Okay. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our discussion here. Thanks, everybody. Let's give a hand to our panelists and presenters here.